Hello, students. I am Mrs. Okeke FN from Christian Religious Studies Department of St. Charles College, Onitsha. I welcome you to today's online teaching. The topic of our discussion is the ascension of Jesus Christ and the promise and coming of the Holy Spirit. Before we continue, let us first of all look at the specific objectives. The specific objectives are, by the end of the lesson, the students will be able to 1. Define Great Commission. 2. Tell the story of the ascension of Jesus Christ. 3. Write down 4 signs that will accompany those who will spread the gospel. 4. Discuss the coming of the Holy Spirit on the apostles. 5. Write down 4 significances of the Holy Spirit to the early church. 6. Write down 3 effects of the Holy Spirit on the disciples. Now let us go ahead as we look at the meaning of the Great Commission. What is the Great Commission? Before Jesus ascended into heaven, he gave his disciples the Great Commission. And what is it? Now, the Great Commission was the final instruction Jesus gave to his disciples on the things they will be doing after his ascension. Just like in our various families, if one is lucky to have a dad that lives long, before he dies, he will gather his children and give them instructions on what they will be doing. That was what exactly Jesus did. Now let us look at the story of the ascension of Jesus Christ. After commissioning the disciples, and what is this commissioning all about? Jesus told them to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and promising to be with them till the close of age. And then he gave them a charge not to depart from Jerusalem until they receive the Holy Spirit. Hold on. Now, after that, he led the disciples to Bethany, to the Mount of Olives, and there he blessed them. And after blessing them, he immediately ascended into heaven. Then the disciples returned to Jerusalem with great joy, worshiping together in the temple. Now, there are certain signs that will accompany those who spread the gospel. The signs are, 1, they will cast out demons, because Jesus made it clear that they will do more than he did. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up serpents and it will not hurt them. Even if they drink any deadly thing, it will not hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick and the sick ones will recover. Let us continue as we look at the promise and coming of the Holy Spirit on the apostles. Now let us first of all look at the person of this Holy Spirit. Who is he? The Holy Spirit is the third person in one God. His other names include the Counselor, the Paraclete, power from on high, and so on. The Holy Spirit descended on the apostles on the day of Pentecost. The Pentecost was one of the festivals of the Jews. The Holy Spirit descended them on 10 days after his ascension into heaven. The story continues. The coming of the Holy Spirit. On that day, the apostles were in the upper room where they had the Last Supper. Being afraid of the Jews, they were always there praying. They could not do any other thing because they were afraid of the Jews. Suddenly, a sound came from heaven like the rush of a mighty wind and filled the entire house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them tongues like of fire, distributed and resting on each of them. Each one will look on the other person and will see the fire. And then they were filled with the Holy Spirit. And they began to speak in tongues as the Spirit gave them utterances. Now, like I told you, that feast, the Jews had been celebrating it. And they were all there in Jerusalem celebrating the feast. Now, the noise attracted many people to the house where the apostles were. When they came there, they were amazed because each heard the apostles speaking in his own language. For example, you are an Igbo, a Yoruba, an Hausa, and you are there and you hear the disciples speaking in your own dialect. Now, the story continues. Now the people were surprised and wondered, saying, are all these who are speaking Galileans? How is it that we hear each of us in his own language? All were surprised and confused, saying to one another, what does this mean? But others who also were there mocked and accused them of being drunk. Now, what are the significance of the Holy Spirit to the Holy Church? To the early church? 1. It gave the disciples the boldness to preach publicly without fearing the Jewish authorities. Before this time, they were fearing, they were afraid, and they always locked themselves up in the upper room. Secondly, it equipped them with the power to perform signs and wonders, which brought about the steady increase of converts. Jesus promised them that they will do more than he did, and that was what happened. They performed signs, they performed miracles, and many people were converted to Christianity. Thirdly, the fulfillment of the promise made by Jesus to his disciples was witnessed on that day. And what was the promise? That he will send them the Holy Spirit. The significance continues. The significance of the Holy Spirit to early Christians continues. Number 4, the Holy Spirit was the unseen guide that helped the church to live a communal life. They were able to worship together in the temple, break bread together, and do other things in common. Number 5, the Great Commission was also fulfilled by the influence of the Holy Spirit. What is that Great Commission? To go and make disciples of all nations. They were able to do it. And finally, the Pentecost. The coming of the Holy Spirit marked the actual takeoff of the church. In fact, that was the day the church was born. Now, effects of the Holy Spirit on the disciples. 1, he gave them the boldness to go out and preach the gospel. Before this time, they were afraid. They could not do anything. But after that, they were bold enough to go and preach the gospel. Secondly, it worked through the disciples to heal the sick. They were able to heal the sick. They were able to cast out demons. They were able to see visions. They were able to prophesy and warn the disciples of dangerous misfortune ahead of them. Thirdly, it helps to promote good relations among various members of the church. And finally, he aids in the conversion of new members and restoration of peace among peoples and even nations. Now let us see the much we have learned as we summarize. Now, as Jesus directed the disciples, they went to Galilee, where they saw Jesus and worshipped him. He gave them the Great Commission and gave them a charge not to depart from Jerusalem until they received the Holy Spirit. Then he led them to the Mount of Olives, and before their eyes, he ascended into heaven. And after 10 days, he sent them the Holy Spirit, and they witnessed for him. Now, having listened to the lesson, let us look at the evaluation. Now, let us see the much you have learned as you answer the evaluation questions. Number 1, what is the Great Commission? Number 2, what charge did Jesus give to his disciples before his ascension? Number 3, what 4 signs will accompany those who will spread the gospel? Number 4, who is the Holy Spirit? Number 5, discuss the coming of the Holy Spirit on the apostles. Number 6, write down 4 significances of the Holy Spirit on Christian church. Number 7, mention 3 effects of the Holy Spirit on the disciples. Now for your assignments, you have to read up. You cannot do without reading the Bible as far as you are doing CRS. Matthew chapter 28 from verses 11 to 20. Mark chapter 16 from verses 15 to 20. Luke chapter 24 from verses 50 to 53. John chapter 14, the whole of 14. Then chapter 16, 5 to 16. Acts of the Apostles chapter 1, 3 to 5. For my contacts, you send your answers to my contacts 080 38238 Forward the answers to these contacts in my WhatsApp. Thanks for listening.